So hello everyone and welcome to this Intralingo Spotlight. I'm Lisa Carter, founder and creative director of Intralingo. Today my guest is the author Jane Banning. Welcome, Jane.
Hey, Lisa.
So good to have you here.
Thanks.
Yeah, so Jane, we're going to be talking specifically about your collection of poetry, prose, essay, and as well as microfiction, flash fiction. But I'd love for you just to tell us a little bit about your trajectory as a writer. You often refer to yourself as a late bloomer.
It's true. Even though I've been a reader for decades, I suspect like all writers, I didn't really figure this out until I was 50, and a friend was writing a book, and I came home and said, "Hey, Rick, my husband, so-and-so is writing a book," and he said, "You could write a book." I'm like, okay, well, I didn't write a book, but I wrote a personal essay about giving birth to a gearhead. In other words, my son, who is very mechanical and into cars, and I'm not. So about the contrast between the two of us and how that's facilitated a lot of growth and insights for me. So that was my first attempt, and it never stopped then.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
It gives a lot of us hope that whatever it is that we're thinking about doing, sometimes you just need that comment, that spark that says, hey, yeah, maybe I can do this.
Exactly. Yeah, why don't I try?
Yeah.
And to me, the beauty of composing on the computer is at cut and paste. I mean, if you don't like it, you are able to change things without any effort at all.
Exactly. It's, I can't imagine.
I can't even, I know. Right.
Any other way. So you have since gone on to publish multiple times in literary journals. You've been on the short list for a couple of prizes. And your first collection, which we're going to talk about, is Asparagus Roots. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
The birth of Asparagus Roots was really interesting too, and it came from a comment as well from a very dear friend of mine. And I had been working for a long time on flash fiction and poetry and essays, and then started a novel. So, excuse me. And I was visiting with her and said, there's so many elements to a novel. The plot needs to flow. There needs to be enough tension. There's to be adequate character development. There needs to be causality. In other words, actions of the characters need to make sense and to be related to one another. There's metaphor. There's overall. So, I mean, it was like, and she said, maybe you should think about just using your short pieces in a book. And I was again like, maybe I should. So because I'd worked a lot with Robin Stratton, who's the editor of Big Table Publishing, and she had published a lot of my other work in the Boston Literary Magazine, I thought, I'm just going to contact her and see if she would be interested in publishing a collection of work, because she had liked many of my things. So I reached out to her and she said yes, and that was it.
That's great.
It was great. And so I had to get together the pieces of the collection that I wanted and put them in the order that I wanted and create or select the cover art. And then she did the publishing, and I have now these books.
Yeah, show the cover art.
Yeah.
It is such a beautiful volume.
And the cover art was a story too. The artist's name is Jessica Torrent, Torrant. I had started looking on Pinterest for images, and I wasn't finding anything that looked like asparagus that was interesting enough. And so, but I did find a painting that looked a lot like this. So I contacted the artist, and the artist said, "That's not mine. I don't know whose it is." Kept looking, found Jessica's work, contacted her, And she said, I no longer have that in my digital collection. My computer crashed and I lost everything. So I'm like, oh, this isn't meant to be. But she said, I'll paint you something like that.
Amazing.
So she painted it. I looked at it. It was exactly what I wanted. And now I not only have this cover, but I have the painting too.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So she just does incredible and beautiful work.
That's great. Oh, what a great story. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It was
Yeah,
cool.
it was meant to be.
I think so.
Hmm. So, Jane, I think you're going to read Asparagus Roots for us, that actual selection from the book.
Yes.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and...
Okay. I will do that. And then let me preface it by saying just a couple of things about it.
Please.
I was talking again to my husband a little bit about what to write. And he said, why don't you write about a World War II veteran and a Vietnam veteran having a conversation in your uncle's backyard. So this is what happened. The abandoned railroad track drowsed at the far end of Clifford and Violet's backyard. The track laid on the edge of town, within sight of the main street and its crumbling post office. Asparagus, sweet and slender, grew tall alongside the old rails. Clifford and Kevin sat at the backyard picnic table, away from the women folk clotted up in the kitchen. Not much talking needed out here. A metal bowl and a pile of freshly cut asparagus sat on the table. The men sliced the asparagus spears and threw them into the bowl. The chunks zinged off the bowl's hard edge and thudded on top of the other pieces. Apple blossoms nodded in the wind, and a bee buzzed over a dandelion. The men's hands grew comfortably dirty. Good pick this year, said Kevin, shaking back his long hair. Yep, not too hot, not too cold this spring so far, Clifford said. Strange question, Cliff. Asparagus make your pee stink? Asked Kevin. Stink like hell, Clifford nodded once. Janet says it doesn't make her pee stink. A robin chuckled from the apple tree. Well, I wouldn't believe a word of that, but I haven't been around much woman piss, just violets these 50 years. I'll tell you about stink, though, if you want to know. The knife grew still. Germany, that winter of 44, 14 men in a squad. It was god awful, and we didn't eat asparagus, no sir. Only sea rations. It was worse than a pig lot. It was bad in Da Nang, too. Fatigues never dried out some days, Kevin said quietly. Yep, the stink, the screams, they're all the same. And it don't matter one bit if you're in the swamp or in the snow. Kevin looked up. How many years has it been? Do you still hear them in the night? 30 years. Clifford kept his eyes on the table. I still hear them. The two men sat silently. The metal bowl was full. Back by the railroad track, the cut asparagus stumps barely poked above ground level. Their severed tops seeped and dripped. The roots spread farther every year. So my husband and my uncle never did have that conversation, but that's how I imagined it might play out.
Yeah. It's an incredible piece. It's well, like all of your work, the brevity adds such depth to it.
Thank you.
And the descriptions of nature interspersed with the realities of life, they're really both so present in that piece.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dad was a World War II veteran as well and fought with the Canadians. And I can hear him having that sort of a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my uncle never talked about his experience much. So I think that's the way it would have been for him.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't something that you talked about.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, such depth and richness there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you have another piece you wanted to share?
I do. There's a little more levity. Another short one, super short, and then a very short poem if you want. So
Great.
this one is called Basement Pickles. So I grew up in an old house in the 1950s, and this was our basement. So see what you think. The cellar is not safe. The cellar is festooned with granddaddy longlegs, dangling dangerously from thin filaments that itch the face and the arms. I claw them away, tripping on a stair, bumbling into the icy cement wall, and careening towards the furnace. The furnace. Oh God, it makes unfathomable sounds in the night and at unpredictable times in the day. Any moment it might fire up, groaning like an old man in a dusty shirt, crumbs of coal black on his chest. The cellar waits, damp, with a chill under my bare feet, just now hot from the summer grass, dirty and sunburned. But Mother has asked for a jar of pickles, her voice with the low and chin-tucked tone, saying there's no way to avoid the cellar. The clinging cobwebs, the corners in back of the furnace, and the horrible clutch of hands that will grab me, breathless and helpless, voiceless, my bare feet dragging into the shadows. Pickles. I trade the cellar and death for pickles. I was really afraid of that basement.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that you can fictionalize any event in your life. And so you can exaggerate and create as much tension and emotion as you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. I think there's another piece of yours where well, there's a lot of them that do this, but you actually talk about doing it in one of the pieces in your book. How, as writers, why is it that
Yeah.
we take all of these things in our lives and have to create something from them?
Yes, I remember that you liked that one.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah. And it's on your blog, maybe.
It might be. Yes, it
Yeah.
is. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for the reminder. I'm going to dig
Right.
that back up and share it. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thanks.
that's
Thanks.
great.
It was fun to write. I mean, and there are plenty of very weighty topics that are in Asparagus Roots, but I think things need to be balanced out for it to be effective and fun for a reader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something I actually wanted to talk to you about is sort of the weaving together of this collection, because as you say, there are pieces that like the first one you read, the title piece, Asparagus Roots, which is lovely and lyrical, and yet has a lot of emotional depth to it. There are pieces that are reflective. There's a lot of nature pieces in there as well. And all of the pieces that are human, about human experience, loss and love and even death. And it's such a mix. Was it hard for you to choose the pieces and to weave these together? And what were you aiming to do with the collection?
It was hard. The sequencing was totally up to me. And I didn't want to break it into sections like with typical titles like loss and parenting and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
but rather for it to just kind of flow. And then I sent what I wanted in the collection to Robin, and she said, send me more. So I went through all the rest of the things that I had written, a lot of the things that had not been published before, and sent those to her, and I integrated those too. So I think that I know as a reader I like contrast between intensity and levity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I tried to do here too.
Excellent. Yeah. So I'd love to hear the poem that you chose to read.
Okay. This is I live out in the woods and by water, and I get a lot of inspiration from just observing, and I observe detail and observe especially smell. So I don't know if there's a smell in this particular poem, but it's called When August Left. When August left, September blundered in, wearing a cold shirt, mad, perhaps, at the summer's long rains. It bloodied a few random leaves like a subway station thug, the flats of its hands pressing down the lake's sparkles, its shoulders full of clouds. It sits, this angry toddler she-tyrant, with arms crossed, smug. In days or even moments, it will toss its red and gold head and flounce a skirt, breathless. So the seasonal change here in northern Wisconsin is remarkable, and the colors are stunning. And then it's gone.
Yeah.
It just flounces off, and then we get gray and snow and the next season.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I love how she's personified as feminine.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a trick to personify something without making it a caricature. So I don't know if I'm always very good at that, but it's fun to try.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, those are lovely. It's great to get a sense of the range of pieces that are in your work.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really nice. I think one of the other things I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, Jane, is this notion of, it's in your bio, which will be below this show. But you talk about how right now you're reading more nonfiction to try to understand a bit more about the world and its citizens, and certainly reading about the world and its citizens is 100% what Intralingo is aiming and intending to promote and do. I just love to hear your perspective on that and what it's making you think of these days.
I think it makes me a better person to try to get out of my own narrow perspective, or what may be somewhat of a narrow perspective, to find hopefully some common ground, some common understanding among people. And I've become a very picky reader. I don't know if this has happened for you, but kind of the more great writing you read, the less happy you are with writing that's not great. The third piece of this is that time is short and time is precious. And so even in retirement, I have a pretty full schedule, but I can't waste it. Try not to waste it. So I'm trying to read things that will make a difference for me and maybe for the way that I interact with other people.
I love that. Yeah, I love that so much because, reading does so much for us individually, but it also does a lot for the way we behave, exactly as you say, and interact with the world. Yeah.
Some of it's hard to get through. Some of it's very dense cognitively. So got to pick the time of day when I can absorb. But there is so much, as you know, there's so much there. to
Mhm.
try to pick up and learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that can happen even in fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it,
Yep. And we know that fiction helps people develop empathy too.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, so true. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Now I have a funny question for you to round us off, to put us on a lighter topic as well. It's in your bio, Jane, and people listening are from around the world, and I must admit that I'm not too far away here in Canada. But what is pickleball?
Back to the pickles.
Yes.
So pickleball was invented a couple decades ago by two dads whose kids were tired of their regular summer games. And they created this game that was a combination of badminton, tennis, and ping pong. So it's
Oh,
played with a paddle, sort of like a ping pong paddle, but a little bit bigger, on a court that's like a tennis court, but smaller. The scoring is a lot simpler,
okay.
um, and it can be played by anybody. So it's really big in retirement communities, but it's also making its way into schools now,
Interesting.
into physical education classes. So I'm telling you, there are people who are absolutely fierce about this and extremely competitive. And then there are those who just want to play for nothing but absolute fun. So you can play in the gamut of skills and abilities. It's a blast. I love it.
That's so great. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in your bio, and I was like, I have to ask her about this, not just for me, but I'm doing a service to the world here.
Absolutely.
Sharing
Absolutely.
a little bit of culture, right?
Pickleball.
Yeah.
Their dog was named Pickle. That's why
Oh,
they named it Pickleball.
there you go. Okay, I was gonna ask.
Right.
Oh, I love that. I
That's
love
fun.
that. So when
Hmm.
you're not writing and reading, you're playing pickleball and
Right.
teaching yoga. And
Hmm.
yeah, that
Yeah.
is great.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today, Jane. I really appreciate it.
Lisa, thank you.
Oh, so for everyone watching or listening, Jane Banning's full bio is going to be in the show notes here, including a link to her website, links as well to her book, Asparagus Roots, which I absolutely encourage you to read. If you enjoyed this video, I would also be super grateful if you would like it, share it, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to get notifications, and of course, stay tuned for the next episode of the Intralingo Spotlight with an author or translator from somewhere in this wonderful wide world of ours. Thank you so much for listening, and thanks again, Jane.
Thanks, Lisa.